Hello there.
This is my new card for the
Music Thing Modular Workshop System. It is a granular processor that in real time
slices and dices.
your audio up and produces some
Interesting.
and perhaps unpredictable results. That's
Enough of that.
Sorry about that. This is Sheep. Sheep is cloud shaped, as in Mutable Instruments cloud, but it is quite different and it doesn't actually share any code with clouds, just some of the ideas, but it's very focused on pitch shifting and time stretching. And this is going to be a kind of demo video manual for it. So controls wise, you have grains that fire immediately if no clock is plugged into the pulse 1 input, but you can clock it and it will accept very fast clocks, which can be fun. Your main knob here is your pitch knob that changes the speed at which the grains play, and therefore their pitch. The X knob is the position of the grains in the buffer. There is a 2.6 second stereo buffer in the HiFi mode. We'll talk about LoFi later. So this X knob on the left side is a delay position, and on the right side it's a spread position, so a attenuated noise spread of where the grains get triggered. The Y knob controls the grain size, and the switch controls the buffer state. So normal middle position is reading. I switch it up and it will freeze the contents of the buffer, no longer recording any new material. And if I push it down, any grains that are currently live will loop, and that creates a cool stuttering glitch effect. The audio ins and outs are just that, 2 ins, 2 outs. For modulation, you can modulate the position of grains, in which case when you plug something in, the X knob becomes an attenuverter. You can modulate the speed of the grains playing and therefore their pitch at the CV2 input, and then when that's connected, the main knob becomes an attenuverter. And then we give you some interesting control signals at your CV outputs. So the first one is grain rate noise, so a random signal that's sampled once every time a grain is triggered, and a ramp that can be used as a reference for how time would normally pass in the buffer. So it ramps for the entire time of the buffer. On the trigger side, I already mentioned the grain trigger. The second pulse input is a grain gate. So if this is high, you get grains. If it's plugged in and low, you do not get grains. And then I tried to provide 2 useful pulse outputs. The first one fires whenever any grain is near its end. It's not necessarily an even clock, because when we send in a fast clock to the grain trigger and we reach the maximum number of grains, which is 14, we stop triggering new grains, and therefore our grain completion clock is kind of uneven and interesting, and it is in sync with the grains at least. The second pulse output is a stochastic pulse output. It produces a even clock, but beats on that clock are skipped randomly, and that produces interesting results, either self-patching here or elsewhere in the system. The LEDs show you the states of the outputs, and that's it. Seems simple, but there is a lot here, I assure you. The idea for this occurred to me the morning of the first meetup of the Music Thing Modular Discord channel. The crazy idea was take Landscape FM's human-controlled tape transport, I think, HCTC, and make a digital version of that where you have kind of oscillator-controlled digital transport. And I did use OCDT as a working name for a while. It didn't stick because while it can do that, I realized that when you basically take a clock and play a sample every time a clock is received, and you support fast clocks, that's interesting. But it gets more interesting when you increase the size of what's being played from a sample to a grain. And that's a longer chunk of audio that's getting played back. So the first demo to do is to set the grain size really small, and then we're going to send in a fast clock. First thing I have to do is grab some audio. It's always listening, so I'll just flip the switch up after talking a little bit. Now that that's captured, it's still looping a little bit. I'm going to send in a clock from my oscillator here, square wave. I'll set it nice and slow. And I'm going to decrease that grain size down to 0. just little tiny bits of audio. So I'll just flip the switch up after talking a little bit. So I'll just flip the switch up after talking a little bit. So I'll just flip the switch up after talking a little bit. So you get your sample back if you just send it in a really fast clock with a small grain size, which is cool. And then if you increase the grain size, you can get cool digital filters and things start to get granular and weird. Up after talking a little bit. So I'll just flip the switch up after talking a little bit. So I'll just flip the switch up after talking a little bit. So I'll just flip the switch up after talking a little bit. Yeah, now I want to show you time stretch mode, which is what we get when we plug the ramp, the CV2, out into the position input. And so I'm going to grab another little bit of me talking. For this one, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 1. So with time stretching mode, because there's a ramp going into the position, your attenuverter becomes effectively like the rate of time. You can think of all the way right as being normal forward time. It's not quite normal. You won't be able to reproduce it as easily. That's just the nature of the beast. All the way left will be far reversed. Where I like to play with it is low values, negative and positive, and then mess with your grain size. And you get really interesting results. It basically lets you decouple pitch from speed. So I said 3 a lot faster than that, and I said it a lot lower than that. But this algorithm lets you take something and make it go slower and control the pitch independently. Usually making something go slower would make it go lower in pitch. That's why you get these cool artifacts and weird sounding words. I'm going to take out the clock so you can just hear the internal clock. Now, you'll also notice that the range of whatever we're sending in controls how much of the buffer you hear, which kind of makes sense, right? You're scrubbing the play position in the buffer. And so it stands to reason that if I send in something constant, like something from voltages, I can jump around in the buffer at will and play it like a keyboard. The thing to remember here is that you're still attenuverting the input with your X knob. So I haven't patched any feedback yet. Before I do that, I'm going to clean things up and switch over to using oscillators now that you get the basic idea. So I'm going to patch in just a sine wave and briefly show that that in and of itself can be quite fun. One patch I like is to FM an oscillator going into here and then sample grains at a random place, and you get this kind of almost bird song effect. A reminder that what you're hearing really sounds like this. But granulated sounds like this. And things get considerably wilder if we patch feedback. So I'm actually going to not patch the oscillator directly into the sheep card. Instead, I'm going to package it into the mixer, channel 4. And then I'm going to take a long cable and patch from one of my modular level output signals. Take that left one and send it to my input. Now I will have my oscillator in channel 4. The channel 3 here is the output of the sheep card, and that will control how much feedback I have. So there's my oscillator on its own. If I turn up channel 3, and so you can really play the feedback beautifully with just letting in a little bit of oscillator. So this is something that might sound familiar to some folks from clouds. What's happening is that the feedback is delayed by some amount, and then it's pitched, and then that in turn is sent back into the input via the mixer. And so the thing that's being pitched is pitched again and again and again. You can get these lovely chords from that. And then one thing I like to do is freeze the buffer and remove the feedback entirely. You get these really cool metallic chordal sounds. We're not listening to the oscillator anymore either. It's just sheep. A reminder, there's no reverb in here. And we can sequence that speed via voltages. So you can get some interesting kind of wind instrument sounds that are atypical for the workshop system, which is really fun. All right, we haven't used that noise output yet. So let's try modulating the pitch with that noise output. At 0 here, you'll have the original, close to the original pitch, and then this will attenuate whatever your pitch input is. So if I turn it over, you'll start to hear random pitches at grain rate. Remember, our spread knob on the left is a fixed kind of playhead, and on the right side it's a random spread. Once again, this is sine oscillators with no external processing. And just for fun, let's put our feedback path back. Oh, there's ghosts in here. Hey, let's try and unplugging some things, see where we get back to. Wild. Okay, a couple more things. The grain gate can be really fun for stopping and starting things. I strongly recommend trying this with a keyboard, like a key step, which you can power from the USB plug here. But I'm going to show you how it works with just the voltages here. Send a nice fast clock. Kind of time stretch mode for fun. Now if I put one of my voltages into the gate, if it's low, we stop getting grains. So as you can see, it's a really cool complement to the 4-button keyboard here because the keyboard is really interesting as an input to pitch, position, and as a gate. So you can get all kinds of interesting interactions with the 4-button keyboard on the workshop system. Okay, this one I like to call generative sequencing, but in hard mode. Basically, it's just a reminder that you can send gates and signals into these. And for this, we are going to listen to oscillators. In fact, we're going to build a basic subtractive synth patch, and then we're going to mess with it via sheep. So square wave, low pass filter, bread and butter. And we're going to send one channel of slopes, the pluckier of the two, into the FM input. And we're going to loop that so you can hear it. So classic subtractive synth stuff, great. Now we're going to get some interesting pitches and gates. To get the interesting pitches, what I'm going to do is loop the top slopes, and I'm going to plug it in to one of my two channels. Let's go left channel and sheep. And then I'm going to take my stochastic output, which it's represented by the bottom right LED here. Not sure if that comes through in the camera. And I'm going to plug it into the channel 2. You can put in whatever you want here, to be clear. And we're just going to remember that if I have the switch in the middle, it's listening to whatever's happening for the last 2 seconds. And so in the left channel, I have this LFO that's wiggling. And in the right channel, I have these random pulses that are happening. And so I get 2.6 seconds of fun. I'm going to flick that switch up. I'm just going to unplug these. Our buffer is all set up. Now, remember our subtractive synth. We are going to take the pulse output, the processed pulse, which is the right channel, and we're going to put that into the input of our slopes that's triggering the filter. And that'll give us interesting rhythms, hopefully right off the way. And remember, it helps to remember what the settings that reproduce the signal most accurately are. So if we put this X knob somewhere on the left and the Y knob close to 0, that'll give us close to the real signal. So immediately we get this rhythmic thing, right? Well, time stretching works here too. so you can speed it up and slow it down. I find the speed doesn't have a huge effect on these low frequency situations. Let's try plugging in the first channel into the FM of that oscillator. And then things get really wild. Turn up the FM. Still pretty tame. Let's try increasing that grain size. And maybe let's use that spread control. Right? So you can granulate lines of triggers, you can granulate LFOs, and then use that to sequence other things. The results are really wild. You can grab bits of noise as your pitch input. That can be interesting. Let's try a demo of that. I'll put noise into my FM, and I'll put stochastic pulses again to channel 2. Record 2 more seconds. Okay, that's cheap. Oh, I forgot to talk about LoFi. So there's 2 UF2 files on the GitHub, and I'll provide links to both in the description here. The LoFi version is 8-bit audio, and you'll notice it's woollier as far as sheep go. It's a little bit noisier, it's crunchier, but you do get more time. So there's a 5.2 second buffer on LoFi sheep, and there's a 2.6 second buffer on HiFi sheep, which is 12-bit audio. So give them a try. If you prefer to have that hi-fi feel, great. If you want to try the LoFi crunch, then give LoFi a try. This demo has been entirely with the HiFi card, and the LoFi card is functionally identical, but with extra character. Have fun. Send me what you made. Take care.